Detective Raymond Ward sat in his dimly lit office, the hum of the overhead lights barely audible as the rain hammered against the windows. In front of him lay a folder containing a case he couldn't shake, an unsolved murder that had lingered in his mind for months. The victim, a local journalist, was found in an abandoned warehouse, her life cut short under mysterious circumstances. Raymond had been drawn to the case from the beginning, his obsession growing as each dead end and false lead only deepened the mystery. His hands trembled slightly as he opened the folder and began to review the evidence again. Photographs, witness statements, and autopsy reports, all offering little clarity. His mind raced, the pieces of the puzzle scattered but just out of reach. He could feel the weight of the case pulling at him, tightening around him with each passing day. "What am I missing?" he muttered, his voice low and strained. The walls of his office felt smaller now, suffocating him, as he realized he couldn't walk away, not until he uncovered the truth. He felt the familiar itch of obsession, a feeling he knew all too well. This case would define him, he was certain of it. But with every turn, it seemed to be slipping further from his grasp. Raymond knew he couldn't afford to waste time. The case had already consumed too much of his life, and with each passing day, the leads grew colder. He had just received a tip from a confidential informant who claimed to know something about the night of the murder. The informant, however, was terrified. They had provided only vague details, mentioning a man who had been seen near the warehouse around the time of the murder. "The man's name is Tony," the informant had said, voice trembling. "He's dangerous. I can't give you much more, but you need to find him. He's the key." Raymond felt a renewed sense of determination. This was it, the break he'd been waiting for. He knew the name Tony, a local thug with ties to organized crime. If he could track him down, it could mean the end of this twisted game. But Raymond also knew the risk. Tony wasn't someone to be approached lightly. As he prepared to move forward, the weight of the case settled heavily on his shoulders. He couldn't back down now, not when he was so close. But the question still lingered, could he trust the informant, or was this just another dead end? Raymond's search for Tony took him to the underbelly of the city, a place where the law rarely ventured. He stood at the entrance of a rundown bar, the neon lights flickering above him, casting a sickly glow on the wet pavement. This was Tony's territory. Raymond knew he wasn't the first cop to try and take down Tony, but he had an edge. He wasn't just following the law. He was consumed by the case, the obsession driving him forward. As he entered the bar, the smell of stale beer and cigarettes hit him hard. The room was dark, with a haze of smoke filling the air. Patrons sat at the bar, casting wary glances at the newcomer. Raymond walked to the counter, where the bartender, a burly man with a scar across his face, met his gaze. Without a word, Raymond slid a photo of Tony across the bar. "Have you seen him?" he asked, his voice low but commanding. The bartender hesitated, his eyes darting around nervously. Raymond could feel the tension building. Finally, the bartender nodded, his lips trembling. "I've seen him. He's trouble, but I'm not getting involved." Raymond slammed his hand down on the counter, his patience wearing thin. "You don't have a choice. Where can I find him?" The bartender sighed and motioned toward the back. "Through the alley. But be careful. Tony doesn't like to be disturbed." With that, Raymond moved quickly, the hunger for answers overtaking his caution. He could feel the weight of the case pressing down on him, each step taking him closer to a dangerous truth. Raymond found himself in the narrow alley behind the bar, the air thick with the smell of damp concrete and rot. He moved cautiously, his senses heightened. The dim light from the bar's neon sign barely illuminated the alley, leaving him in near total darkness. A figure appeared from the shadows, tall and muscular, wearing a leather jacket. "Tony." The man's cold eyes locked with Raymond's, and for a moment, time seemed to stand still. Raymond could feel his pulse quicken, the tension thick in the air. "I've been looking for you," Raymond said, his voice steady but firm. Tony smirked, a dangerous glint in his eyes. "I figured that. You cops never learn, do you?" Raymond took a step forward. "I'm not here for a fight. I'm here for answers." Tony chuckled, clearly amused. Answers? You think I'm just going to tell you everything? That's not how this works. Raymond's frustration boiled over, and he took another step closer, his hand resting on the holster of his gun. You'll talk, Tony, one way or another. Tony's smirk faded, replaced by a look of cold calculation. He took a step back, his hand brushing against the side of his jacket. Raymond could see the tension in his posture. You don't know what you're getting into, Tony said, his voice lowering. This goes deeper than you think. The warning hung in the air, but Raymond didn't flinch. This was his chance, and he wasn't going to back down. The confrontation with Tony didn't go as planned. In the tense standoff, Tony had managed to slip away, disappearing into the shadows before Raymond could react. Frustration simmered in Raymond's chest as he stood alone in the alley. He had come so close, and yet Tony had vanished like smoke. With a bitter sigh, Raymond pulled out his phone and dialed his partner, Detective Carla Hayes. He slipped away, Raymond said, his voice thick with irritation. I had him, but he disappeared. Carla's voice came through, calm but tinged with concern. Don't do anything rash. We'll get him next time. Raymond clenched his jaw, staring into the dark alley. He knew Carla was right, but the case felt like it was slipping through his fingers. He had hoped that Tony would be the key to unlocking the mystery of the journalist's murder. But now he was back to square one. As Raymond walked back to his car, the weight of the case pressed down on him, but he knew one thing: he wasn't going to stop until he solved this. The answers were still out there, but they were becoming harder to find. Raymond and Carla dug deeper into Lisa Monroe's last investigation. They uncovered a connection between her and a local politician, Victor Laird, whose name kept popping up in relation to shady deals. Raymond couldn't shake the feeling that Laird was at the heart of something bigger. We need to talk to someone who knows him, Raymond said. Someone who can give us the inside track. Carla nodded, but be careful. Laird's connections run deep. Raymond and Carla met with Janet Morrison, a former colleague of Lisa's. Janet hesitated before revealing what she knew. Lisa was onto something big, she whispered. She was getting threats. Someone didn't want her digging any deeper. Janet's words were cryptic, but they confirmed Raymond's suspicions. Lisa had uncovered a dangerous truth, and it had cost her life. Raymond tracked down Tony, a local thug with ties to the cartel. After a tense confrontation, Tony admitted he had seen Lisa talking to Laird before her death. She was getting too close, Tony said. You think you can just waltz in and stop all this? Think again, detective. Raymond knew Laird was their only lead. It was time to confront him. Raymond and Carla tracked Laird to an upscale office building. Laird was smooth, confident, but Raymond could see the cracks. You're not as untouchable as you think, Raymond said, as he confronted him. Laird's smile faded, replaced by a cold, calculating look. You have no idea who you're dealing with, Laird warned, before turning his back on them, making it clear that he knew they were getting too close. Despite the confrontation, Laird denied any involvement in Lisa's death. You don't have enough to bring me down, he said coldly. As they left, Raymond felt the pressure mounting. We're getting closer, but not close enough, Carla said, watching Raymond. We need something concrete, something Laird can't deny. Raymond clenched his jaw, his eyes narrowing with determination. We'll find it, one way or another. Back at the station, Raymond and Carla stood in the observation room, watching as Tony sat across from an officer, his hands cuffed to the table. His posture was defiant, a smirk lingering on his lips despite his capture. Raymond paced in the room, his mind racing. They had Tony, but he wasn't going to talk easily. Carla, standing next to him, crossed her arms, eyes fixed on the interrogation. He knows more than he's letting on, she said quietly. Raymond nodded, his thoughts elsewhere. I can feel it too. But we need to get him to crack. If we don't, we'll hit another dead end. With a deep breath, Raymond stepped forward. Let's go in. It's time to bring this to a head. As they entered the interrogation room, the tension in the air was almost palpable. Tony didn't flinch when Raymond took a seat across from him. Tony, we know you're involved in Lisa's murder. But you're not the only one with blood on your hands. Tony leaned back in his chair, his smile never wavering. You think you have it all figured out, don't you, detective? You're chasing shadows. Raymond's jaw tightened. I'm chasing the truth and you're going to help me find it. Tony leaned forward slightly, his voice dropping to a cold whisper. You're playing a dangerous game. You have no idea who you're up against. The warning echoed in the room. But Raymond wasn't backing down. He had to make Tony talk, no matter the cost. Tony's words weighed heavily on Raymond as they lingered in the air. You have no idea who you're up against. Those words gnawed at him, but Raymond wasn't about to let Tony get the best of him. Who are you protecting, Tony? Raymond asked, his voice steady. Tony chuckled darkly. You really think I'm the one you should be questioning? You have no idea what's happening in this city. You're a pawn in a much bigger game, detective. People like you, people who think they're on the right side, end up buried under the truth they're too blind to see. Raymond's mind raced. He was starting to understand just how deep this case went. What do you mean? He asked, his voice a mix of anger and curiosity. Who's behind all of this? Tony's smirk faltered for just a second, and in that moment Raymond knew he was on the verge of something. But Tony wasn't ready to give up his secrets yet. I'm not talking, not to you, Tony spat, leaning back in his chair. You're not worth it. But Raymond wasn't done. You will talk, he said firmly, because if you don't, I'll make sure the whole city knows who you really are. And when that happens, you won't have a friend left in this world. The room was still. Tony's eyes flickered with something, a fleeting moment of uncertainty. But just as quickly, the coldness returned. You don't scare me, detective, Tony said. But you will. Raymond stepped out of the interrogation room, his mind reeling. Tony hadn't cracked, but something about his attitude had shifted. Raymond couldn't shake the feeling that they were closer to something bigger than just Lisa Monroe's murder. Carla met him in the hallway. What now? She asked, her voice cautious. He's not talking, but he's scared. I can see it in his eyes, Raymond replied. We need to dig deeper. I think there's someone higher up pulling the strings here. Someone powerful. Carla frowned. But who? We've already uncovered a web of lies, and it's still not enough. Raymond's eyes hardened with resolve. We need to go back to the beginning. We need to revisit Lisa's last investigation. Whatever she uncovered, it's the key to everything. He looked at Carla, his voice steady. Let's hit the archives. It's time to go back to where this all started. Back at the precinct, Raymond and Carla combed through the archive room, sifting through the stacks of old case files. It was late, and the silence of the room felt oppressive. They were looking for something, anything, that might connect Lisa's murder to the larger conspiracy Tony had hinted at. These files go back years, Carla said, flipping through a stack of yellowed pages. How are we supposed to find a connection? Raymond didn't answer at first. His eyes were scanning the documents, his fingers tracing over names and dates. Then, a file caught his attention. The name of a local politician, Victor Laird, stood out in the records. Laird had been involved in a controversial case several years ago, one that had been quietly swept under the rug. Raymond pulled the file closer, his heart pounding. This was it. This is the lead, Raymond said, his voice barely above a whisper. Laird's name keeps coming up, and if Lisa was investigating him, she was onto something big. Carla looked at him, her eyes wide. You think Laird is involved? Raymond nodded slowly. I do, and I think Lisa knew more than we realized. She was close to uncovering the truth, and that's why she had to be silenced. With the new lead in hand, Raymond and Carla knew they were walking a fine line. They had uncovered something dangerous, and the walls were closing in. We have to be careful, Raymond said, his voice low and filled with caution. If Laird is behind this, then we've just scratched the surface. He's connected to too many people. Carla nodded, her eyes dark with concern. I don't like this, Raymond. We're going up against some very powerful people. Raymond's jaw tightened. I don't care how powerful they are. This case ends with the truth, no matter what. As they prepared to take their next steps, Raymond felt the weight of the investigation settling in. The deeper they dug, the more dangerous it became. But there was no turning back now. The truth was waiting, and it was up to them to uncover it, no matter the cost. Raymond and Carla sat in the dimly lit office, staring at the file containing Victor Laird's name. The political ties, the hidden financial dealings, everything pointed to him being at the center of a web of corruption that reached far beyond anything they had anticipated. As Raymond ran his fingers through the paperwork, he felt the weight of the case pushing down on him. This wasn't just about a murdered journalist anymore. This was about exposing a system that was built on lies. "I've seen Laird's name in more places than I'd like to count," Raymond muttered, leaning back in his chair. "It's everywhere. Underground deals, shady connections, and dirty money flowing through his pockets." Carla nodded, her face grim. If he's involved in all this, then Lisa's death was just a means to protect something bigger. But we don't have enough to tie him to the murder yet. Raymond slammed his hand on the desk, the frustration palpable. "We're getting closer, Carla. We need to find one solid lead. One person who can confirm everything we suspect. Once we have that, we can take him down." But as Raymond looked at the pile of evidence in front of him, a deep sense of unease crept into his mind. Every step forward felt like they were moving deeper into a pit they might never escape. After hours of poring over evidence, Raymond received an anonymous phone call that would change the course of the investigation. The voice on the other end was shaky, filled with fear. "I have information about Laird," the voice said, "but you need to meet me in person. They're after me. They know I'm talking." Raymond's heart raced as he listened, his mind already racing with possibilities. "Where are you?" he demanded. The voice gave him a location. An old industrial complex on the outskirts of town, and then abruptly hung up. Raymond knew this could be the break they were looking for. "Carla, we need to go now," he said, urgency in his voice. "Someone's willing to talk. If Laird's people find him first, we lose everything." Carla grabbed her jacket and followed Raymond out the door, both of them aware of the risks they were about to take. As they sped through the city, the fear of what they were about to uncover hung in the air like smoke, suffocating and overwhelming. The complex was abandoned, its walls covered in graffiti and rust. As Raymond and Carla approached the entrance, they both felt the weight of the moment. This was it, the moment where everything could either be confirmed or shattered. "Stay close," Raymond warned, his hand resting on his gun. Carla nodded, her expression a mix of determination and apprehension. They moved silently through the corridors, their footsteps echoing in the silence. The smell of mildew and dust filled the air as they approached the designated meeting point. Suddenly, a figure stepped out from the shadows, an informant, just as promised. But before Raymond could speak, the man's expression changed to one of pure terror. "They're here," he shouted, his voice cracking. In an instant, the sound of footsteps grew louder, and Raymond knew they had been set up. "Get down!" he shouted, pulling Carla toward cover as gunshots rang out from the darkness. The complex erupted into chaos as the informant bolted, disappearing into the night. Raymond and Carla were pinned down, forced to wait for the right moment to move. The threat was real, and they were now in deeper than ever before. The gunfire died down as quickly as it had started, but the danger was far from over. Raymond and Carla moved cautiously, making their way through the abandoned complex. "We can't let him get away," Raymond muttered. "If he knows something about Laird, we need him." The two detectives sprinted toward the back of the complex, where they could hear the sound of footsteps rapidly approaching. Raymond's breath came in sharp bursts, his pulse racing. The informant was fast, but Raymond was faster. He spotted him ahead, ducking behind an old delivery truck. Without hesitation, Raymond charged forward, pulling his gun. "Stop!" he shouted. The informant looked back, his face filled with panic, but he didn't stop. Instead, he broke into a sprint, forcing Raymond to chase him through the darkened streets. The cold night air stung Raymond's skin as he pushed himself harder. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, Raymond grabbed the informant by the arm and spun him around. "You're not getting away," Raymond said, his voice firm but laced with desperation. The informant's eyes were wide with fear, his face pale. I can't tell you," he gasped. "They'll kill me. They'll kill us all." Pinned against a wall, the informant finally broke down. Okay, he cried, his voice trembling. "I'll tell you everything, but you have to promise me you'll protect me." Raymond nodded, his gun still trained on him. "Talk," he demanded. The informant swallowed hard. "It's Laird. He's been working with the cartel. They killed Lisa because she found out about the shipment. An illegal deal worth millions. She was going to expose it all, and they couldn't let that happen. I didn't want to get involved, but when I saw what happened to her, I knew I had to help." Raymond's heart sank. The web was even deeper than he thought. The corruption reached the highest levels of power, and the murder of Lisa Monroe was just the beginning. He knew this would change everything. "Where's Laird now?" Raymond asked. The informant shook his head. "I don't know, but they'll be coming for me now. You need to get me out of here." Raymond hesitated for a moment, torn between his duty and the safety of the informant. But he knew the truth was now in their hands, and there was no turning back. Raymond sat in his car, watching the darkened street in front of him. His mind was racing. The informant had provided the breakthrough they needed. Laird was at the center of a vast conspiracy, one that reached deep into the city's political and criminal underworld. But now, Raymond and Carla had to move quickly. The danger was real, and they had only one shot at taking Laird down before he disappeared for good. Raymond's phone buzzed, snapping him out of his thoughts. It was a text from Carla. "Laird's having a meeting tonight. We need to hit it fast, or we lose him." Raymond's heart pounded as he read the message. "This is it," he muttered under his breath. "We end it tonight." He started the car and drove toward the meeting location, a seemingly innocuous warehouse on the edge of town, where Laird was rumored to be finalizing a deal with his cartel associates. The adrenaline coursed through Raymond's veins. This was the moment. They would either succeed or risk losing everything they had fought for. Raymond and Carla approached the warehouse with caution. The area was desolate, the building hidden behind a row of abandoned factories. They parked several blocks away and moved on foot. As they neared the entrance, Raymond gestured for Carla to stay low. "We don't know how many people are in there, so keep your head down," he whispered. The cold air cut through their jackets as they crept toward the side entrance, where a flickering light shone from a small window. Raymond's pulse raced. This was the moment he had been waiting for, but his mind couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. They reached the door, and Raymond slowly twisted the handle. To his surprise, it opened without resistance. The building was eerily silent inside, the shadows casting long stretches of darkness across the floor. They moved cautiously, the sound of their footsteps echoing through the vast empty space. Suddenly, a voice rang out from the darkness. "I knew you'd come, Detective." Raymond froze. The voice was unmistakable. Laird. Laird stepped out of the shadows, a smirk on his face, his expensive suit perfectly tailored. "You should have stayed out of this, Raymond," he said, his voice calm and condescending. "You think you're doing the right thing, but you have no idea who you're dealing with." Raymond's eyes never left Laird's face as he stepped forward, determined to bring him down. "It's over, Laird. We have enough on you to put you away for a long time." Laird's smirk faded, but only slightly. "You really think you can stop this? You're nothing but a pawn, Detective. I've been pulling the strings for years. You've been chasing shadows this whole time." Carla took a step forward, her voice filled with anger. "You killed Lisa Monroe. She was getting too close to exposing you, and you silenced her." Laird's eyes narrowed. "You have no proof of that. All you have are accusations. And that's not enough." Raymond's fists clenched, but he held back. "We have everything we need," he said, his voice cold. "You're done." Laird's face twisted with disdain. "You don't know how deep this goes. There's more at stake than you realize, Raymond. You've made a dangerous enemy." With those words, he turned on his heel and walked away, disappearing into the shadows once again. Raymond's heart pounded in his chest, but there was no time for hesitation. He was determined to see this through, no matter the cost. Raymond and Carla rushed forward, but by the time they reached the area where Laird had been standing, He was gone. The room was silent, save for the distant hum of machinery and the sound of their heavy breathing. "He's gone," Carla said, her voice tinged with frustration. Raymond cursed under his breath. "We were too slow." They moved quickly, searching every inch of the warehouse, but there was no sign of Laird. It was as if he had vanished into thin air. Raymond felt a growing sense of panic. He knew we were coming. He set this up. He's always one step ahead. Carla looked around, scanning the room for any clues. "He's playing us, Raymond. And now he's gone underground." Raymond's mind raced. They were running out of time. "We need to track him down before he slips away for good. I won't let him get away with this." The pressure of the case weighed heavily on him, but he couldn't back down. Not now. He couldn't let Lisa's death be in vain. As Raymond and Carla made their way back to the car, Raymond's phone buzzed again. This time, it wasn't a text. It was a video message. Raymond hesitated for a moment before pressing play. The screen flickered to life, showing a close-up of Laird's face. He was smiling, mocking almost. "You think you've won, detective?" Laird's voice was cold, taunting. "You've only just scratched the surface. The real game is only beginning, and you're already in over your head." Raymond's grip on the phone tightened. "I'll find you," he muttered under his breath, the determination in his eyes burning brighter than ever. The video cut off, leaving Raymond and Carla in stunned silence. This was no longer just about Lisa's murder. Laird had crossed a line, and Raymond knew he had to stop him before it was too late. Raymond sat at his desk, staring at the now unfolding conspiracy before him. The video from Laird had only confirmed what he feared. They were not just fighting for justice anymore. They were fighting for their lives. The pieces of the puzzle were finally coming together, but with each discovery, the danger grew. Carla entered the office, her face grim. "I spoke to the informant again. He's too scared to keep talking. Laird's threats are getting worse." Raymond rubbed his eyes. "We need to end this. We can't let him destroy everything." He grabbed the case file, scanning the names involved. There was no time to lose. They had to move now. Raymond and Carla finally cornered Laird in a secluded building, the tension palpable as they prepared to confront him once and for all. The building was eerily quiet, the air thick with the sense that this was the end of the line. As they moved through the abandoned floors, they could hear the soft echo of footsteps, a sound that sent chills down their spine. Laird appeared, his face cold and calculated. "You should have stayed out of this, detective," he sneered. "Now it's too late for you both." The game was over. The confrontation that had been building for months had arrived. In the final moments of their confrontation, Laird revealed the horrifying truth: his ties to the highest levels of power, his orchestrated plan to cover up the cartel's dealings, and the brutal murder of Lisa Monroe to keep it all secret. "You were never meant to find out," Laird said, his voice cold. "Now, you'll disappear like the rest." Raymond's pulse quickened. The truth was more shocking than he could have imagined, and with it came the realization that the stakes were higher than ever. The dust had settled, and the case was far from over. With Laird arrested, the wheels of justice began to turn, but Raymond and Carla knew that the fight was far from finished. They had uncovered the corruption, but the system that had protected it for so long would not give up easily. Raymond stood by the window, looking out over the city. "This isn't just about solving a murder anymore," he said quietly. "It's about bringing down a system that thrives on lies." With Laird in custody and the investigation unfolding, Raymond and Carla felt a bittersweet relief. The truth had been exposed, but the scars from the journey would remain. "We did it," Carla said, her voice soft but proud. Raymond nodded. "Yeah, but it's just the beginning. There's still more to uncover." As they walked out of the station, the city ahead seemed a little less dark, a little less uncertain. But Raymond knew that the fight for justice was never truly over. It was just a new chapter. Raymond and Carla had thought they had everything under control. Laird was behind bars, and the case was supposedly wrapped up. But as they were about to file the last report, Raymond received a cryptic message from an anonymous source. "You don't know the whole truth yet." Panic settled in his chest. This wasn't over. Laird's arrest had only been a small victory. Someone else, someone even more powerful, was still pulling the strings. As Raymond looked at Carla, he knew they had to act quickly, before it was too late. The next morning, Raymond and Carla visited a former informant, hoping to uncover more about the shadowy figure behind Laird. The informant, shaking and fearful, revealed the final piece of the puzzle. A high-ranking official in the police department had been involved in orchestrating the entire crime syndicate. Raymond felt the ground shift beneath him as he realized the full extent of the betrayal. "We were set up," Raymond muttered, his voice thick with disgust. "All of this, Laird, the cartel, was just a distraction. The real criminal was inside the system all along." Raymond and Carla confronted the corrupt police official in a high-rise office, the tension thick in the air. "You think you've won?" the official sneered. "I was always 3 steps ahead of you." Raymond stepped forward, his voice steady, but filled with anger. "You've been using your position to hide the truth, but not anymore. You're finished." The official scoffed, but Raymond could see the fear in his eyes. For the first time, the corrupt figure realized he was no longer in control. With the truth finally exposed, there was nowhere left to run. With the case finally solved, Raymond stood at the edge of a new chapter. The corrupt official was arrested, and the system would begin to clean itself. But the toll it had taken on Raymond was undeniable. "It's over," Carla said softly, her voice filled with both relief and sadness. Raymond nodded, but the weight of the journey still lingered. "It'll never be over," he replied. "There will always be more to uncover." He looked out over the city, the streets below now calm. But in his heart, Raymond knew that justice had been served, at least for now. As the case was closed, Raymond knew that he couldn't stop here. The city had its demons, and while one battle had been won, the war for justice was far from over. "Ready to move on to the next one?" Carla asked with a smile. Raymond met her gaze, his face resolute. "Always. The truth never sleeps." With that, they walked out of the office together, stepping into the unknown future. They had survived this case, but the world was full of secrets, and Raymond would be ready for the next one.